हमारे साथ अब और एक खास मेहमान जुड़े हैं, एंड्रू हॉलैंड हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं, उनसे बात करते हैं। एंड्रू, मॉर्निंग टू यू, थैंक्स फॉर जॉइनिंग अस एंड एज ऑलवेज प्लेजर हैविंग यू ऑन द शो। You couldn't have joined on a better day. We have reclaimed 8500. Markets have shown good momentum. Today even the international cues are looking better. And with this kind of setup, we are getting into the budget week, which is due next week. What's your take on markets?
So let me answer from 2 points. First of all, from a global perspective, most of last year, if you remember, we talked about our concerns of monetary policy ruling, really the kind of global growth scenario, and that was something that we were getting more and more worried about. But as we come into 2017, the emphasis now is on fiscal policy, either corporate or personal tax cuts, which we've been calling for some time now to kickstart the global economy. So if that does play out, which it seems to be doing, then obviously, the global growth trajectory could start to improve quite markedly from where we are today. And obviously that gives you a good run for earnings and therefore markets going forward. So the backdrop of that obviously is good for India too. And whilst the markets are looking strong at the moment, I think again we're going into very high expectations for the budget, aren't we? After demonetisation, then obviously we're looking for the finance minister to kickstart the economy, and the 3 ways of doing that is obviously infrastructure spending, through fiscal stimulus, and then obviously corporate and personal tax rates coming down, or the thresholds going up in terms of personal tax. So if he manages to do that, then obviously we could continue this run. The kind of worries would be, from a global viewpoint, how far President Trump will go in terms of trade barriers or border tax, and would that cause any kind of problem in terms of trade wars. But other than that, for our point in terms of India, is just high expectations maybe not being met in the budget.
देवेन चौकसी भी हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, एमडी KRChoksey से। मिस्टर चौकसी, गुड मॉर्निंग, वेलकम टू दी शो। अभी जो पॉजिटिव मोमेंटम बिल्डअप हो रहा है मार्केट में बजट से पहले, काफी सारी होप्स बजट को लेकर भी हैं, लेकिन क्वेश्चन ये है कि क्या पॉसिबिलिटी आपको लग रही है 8600 के लेवल को ब्रेक करके उसके बियॉन्ड भी जाने की?
गुड मॉर्निंग। वेल, आई थिंक मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि जो हिसाब से मार्केट ये महीने के अंदर, लास्ट 3 या 4 वीक के अंदर, आई थिंक मार्केट ने जो हिसाब से अपना एक रवैया लिया है, एक अप्रोच लिया है, और जो हिसाब से कंपनीज के नतीजे आ रहे हैं, उससे एक कॉन्फिडेंस ऐसा बनता है कि ये क्वार्टर डेफिनेटली मार्केट के लिए बेहतरीन क्वार्टर होना चाहिए। एंड गिवन द सिचुएशन दैट अर्निंग्स आर इम्प्रूविंग, गिवन द सिचुएशन कि एक तरफ बजट के हिसाब से भी हमें एक एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि बजट के अंदर ज़्यादा थ्रस्ट मिलेगा इकोनॉमी को स्पेंडिंग के हिसाब से, और मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि ओवरऑल मार्केट के अंदर एक पॉजिटिव मूड डेफिनेटली बना है, बिकॉज ऑफ द करेंसी इज ऑल्सो रिमेनिंग स्टेबल, सो ग्लोबल मनी इज ऑल्सो इन पाइपलाइन फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट इन इंडिया। सो ऑल इन ऑल पुट टुगेदर मार्केट एक डेफिनेटली पॉजिटिव डायरेक्शन दिखा रहा है, एंड आई थिंक डेफिनेटली मान के चलते कि आगे के समय के अंदर नए लेवल दिखने मिलेंगे, मे बी इमीडिएटली पोस्ट बजट और मे बी बिफोर बजट। आई थिंक डिफिकल्ट टू प्रिडिक्ट द लेवल्स ऑन द निफ्टी एंड सेंसेक्स, बट इंडिविजुअल स्टॉक्स के अंदर मैं समझता हूँ कि काफी हद तक अपॉर्चुनिटी बनी रहेगी, बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी दिख रही है ये समय का।
Andrew, also, जिस तरह, the kind of quarterly numbers that we are having at this point, and let's assume for a moment that at least there is nothing that will upset the sentiment of market in budget, then can we say that this market is actually poised for a re-rating?
See, the valuations are already quite stretched. I don't think we're going to see upgrades to forecast right at the moment. If anything, probably more downgrades. I mean, the read-through I get without going into individual sectors or companies at the moment is that the rural economy is still very slow, and that's being kind of articulated by most CEOs that things have maybe picked up in urban cities, but certainly rural is very slow at the moment, and it's starting to slowly kind of move ahead. And obviously the hope is that the budget will kickstart that. But I think it's the second half again. We're going back to a lot of forecasts in the market are saying 50 to 20% EPS growth, and I think we've been looking for that kind of growth in earnings for the last 3 years or so and been sorely disappointed. So markets have run a little bit ahead in terms of valuation, so we might pause depending on the budget. In terms of a re-rating at the moment, because I think there's a lot of factors to play out. And whilst GST is expected to come through and that's seen as a positive, I think that will probably put corporates on a little bit of a standstill as well, because I don't know if all the back end's ready, to be kind of rolled out where GST is a smoothly transition to the new tax. So it might again cause a little bit of not slowdown, but obviously corporates kind of being wary of doing anything expansionary at this time. So I'm not trying to be overly negative, because I'm actually very positive for what's happening globally. And India, to my mind, sits in a very nice spot in terms of, even if there's global trade wars or there's problems for emerging markets, India is not a big exporter, so it's more defensive within the emerging market basket. But obviously, if we do get global growth, then there's going to be other countries like, say, South Korea within the emerging market block, which would obviously do a lot better in that kind of environment than India. But we're a domestic-driven economy. But I think at 17, 18 times, it's probably reflecting some of the more optimistic views of the budget and the recovery in the economy.
Also, Andrew, though we will come to know on 1st of Feb only that what budget will bring about, but there is a lot of expectations regarding the tax rationalization, consumer-friendly budget. But are you betting on consumption theme, keeping in mind the budget, what budget will bring about?
In terms of listen, I mean, there's going to be so many themes for the budget, whether it's, low-cost housing or the push towards housing or consumption. Again, I go back to, it depends on what he does on the corporate and the personal tax rates to kickstart consumption. So, what my feeling is this, is that, if the budget's good enough, then we're going to have confidence to go out there and start spending, because we feel that the economy is going to start picking up. And it's going to be seen obviously in the urban areas first, and then rural economy will pick up in the second half. So I'm not, again, thinking that I want to play consumption stocks just purely on the budget, but obviously they will be a beneficiary of that. But I'd probably look at more of the banking sector, the private banks, because as the economy picks up, there should be a very good kind of catalyst for loan growth to start picking up again as we go forward. So I'd look more towards the kind of the banking sector as a way to play consumers starting to go out there and start spending going forward, because the ratings of consumer stocks are still quite high to my mind.
देवेन, आप जाहिर सी बात है कि इस बार क्योंकि बजट टिपिकली जो पिछले कुछ समय से होते रहा है कि टू सम एक्सटेंट ये थोड़ा नॉन इवेंट हो जाता है मार्केट के लिए, वैसा नहीं होगा. लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स, एसटीटी, सीटीटी, इन सबको लेकर काफी कुछ एक्सपेक्टेशन है भी मार्केट में. लेकिन लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स पर आपका व्यू क्या है, क्योंकि इसकी बात हो रही है इतने समय से, क्या ये प्राइस्ड इन है? 2 या 3 साल की विंडो बनना है इसकी?
ये जहाँ तक मैं समझता हूँ कि कैपिटल गेन टैक्स को 2 तरह से देखना पड़ेगा. एक तो जो आज की तारीख में एफआईआई के ऊपर जो टैक्स है सॉरी, वो टैक्स की जो क्लैरिटी एक अच्छी आनी बनती है, वो क्लैरिटी एक बजट के अंदर आई थिंक गवर्नमेंट विल ट्राई टू ब्रिंग इन, बिकॉज टू ए ग्रेटर एक्सटेंट आई थिंक द मनी विच इज कमिंग थ्रू पी नोट्स आई थिंक इज हैविंग अ सब्जेक्टिव इश्यू ऑन द टैक्सेशन एस्पेक्ट. Second thing, the way in which some of the long-term capital gain tax related I think activities have happened in past, and income tax had to get heavy on those people. मेरे ख्याल से वो विंडो के ऊपर आई थिंक गवर्नमेंट का एक नजरिया अलग से बनेगा. मे बी आई थिंक दैट मे हैव सम रिपरकेशन ऑन द एग्जिस्टिंग एक्टिविटी एज वेल. बट मैं नहीं मानता हूँ कि करंटली जो 1 साल का कैपिटल गेन टैक्स का जो एग्जम्पशन है मार्केट के अंदर, उसके अंदर कोई ज्यादा बदलाव आएगा. क्योंकि मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि गवर्नमेंट का एक तरफ नजरिया ऐसा रहेगा कि इफ द टैक्स इज कलेक्टेड at source through STT, then probably I think it's a clean tax. On the other side, I think if it is collected through long-term capital gain tax, then probably I think you will have a larger amount of money to spend on the collection itself. मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि गवर्नमेंट विल probably I think have a prudent role to play in this particular approach, in which I think they will continue with the STT and probably not touch the long-term capital gain tax for the domestic investors. ऐसा मेरा मानना है.
Andrew, you mentioned that you like private banks right now, but how are you reading the whole NBFC space, especially after demonetization, where demonetization concerns or bruises have emerged?
Yeah, they're facing a lot of problems, aren't they, with collections and obviously growth, and I think that's going to continue for another quarter for them. I think I don't really want to be in this space at the moment. I think valuations, if they come down a little bit more from where they are today, they might become more interesting. But I think the pain is still there for them, and most of them have, again, most of the companies who have reported have articulated that they're seeing some recovery in payments, but it's still two months behind. That is a concern, and obviously, if the budget and rural economy is not seen to be helping to pick up the economy, then these companies will face more problems. So it's a space I don't need to be in, and I think the private banks, with the big ones which have reported, have shown their resilience and their ability to again do well in difficult markets. Or market environment. So I'd rather kind of play that area at the moment. I think the only other area which I'm looking at is obviously, it's a dark horse for maybe for the second half of the year is the real estate sector, which again I'm just going to see what the finance minister does for the housing sector. But certainly demand for housing is going to continue over the year. So I might again look down at either the housing finance companies or building materials. And then possibly the real estate companies in the second half of the year.
देवेन, अब जो हमने ऑलरेडी देख लिया मार्केट में या फिर क्वार्टरली रिजल्ट्स जिस तरह से फैक्टर इन हो गए, उसके बाद बजट के लिए कोई 5 स्टॉक अगर आपको पिक करने हो जो कि आपको लग रहा है बजट के बाद भी चलेंगे, तो वो कौन से होंगे?
आई थिंक जो कंपनीज के अंदर हमें ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस दिख रहा है उसके अंदर एग्री स्पेस में आई थिंक 1 या 2 कंपनी है, जिसमें माइक्रो इरिगेशन में आई थिंक जैन इरिगेशन EPC इंडस्ट्रीज है, और दूसरी तरफ देखें तो आई थिंक UPL इज लुकिंग फेवरेबली प्लेस्ड आई थिंक एज फार एज द लॉन्ग टर्म प्रोस्पेक्ट्स आर कंसर्न. सिमिलरली जो हिसाब से ब्रॉडबैंड नेटवर्क कंट्री के अंदर बनने जा रहा है उसके अंदर स्टारलाइट टेक्नोलॉजी लुक्स आई थिंक फॉर्मिडेबल प्ले. आई थिंक इट इज लुकिंग इंटरेस्टिंगली पोजिशन. We also find some of the interesting companies in auto and auto ancillary, particularly Tata Motors with the revival in the commercial vehicle segment looks I think brilliant from the domestic market point of view, and equally well placed I think from the JLR point of view I think in the global marketplace. So I think such companies which are having fundamental strength, हमें I think ज़्यादा confidence है. With budget or without budget, I think these companies are expected to perform better going forward.
Andrew, a lot of incentives are expected in housing and infrastructure segment in this budget. Also, we will see a special push towards rural economy. That is the expectations right now. So, are these the kind of sectors that you would advise one should stay invested or buy?
Yeah, as I said, I think the housing sector is something that I'm getting more interested in, and whilst I'm not jumping, with 2 feet yet into real estate companies, it could be the dark horse for the second year. So the way I'm going to play the housing sector, because I think demand will continue, even if the push is not evident, even post the budget or during the budget speech, is that building materials is probably the way I'm going to play, or housing finance companies the way I'm going to play this going forward. So I'm quite bullish on the overall housing sector as a growth area. Infrastructure, we've been seeing some good results from the capital goods players. Their order books are pretty full. Again, as usual with these companies, it's all about execution. So if they can continue to execute a little bit better than they have been doing, which is evident in some of the results, then you could see a re-rating for this sector. But I'm not thinking that even in infrastructure it takes time for these orders to flow through to the bottom line profitability. So you have to look at the near term orders for the capital goods players, because that's what's going to affect your earnings in the next 1 year.
Andrew, what's your take on IT stocks? We did see the early jitteriness once Mr. Trump came in. But more than that, I would actually focus on the quarterly numbers that they have reported so far. What's your strategy on IT right now?
My strategy remains as it has been for the past 2 years, in that I remain negative on the sector. I think that whole growth scenario which those companies enjoyed in the IT sector is gone. And they have to reinvent themselves, and reinventing themselves is, as you can see from the numbers, is fraught with ups and downs and management changes. So I still think they have to reinvent themselves, and I'm not paying what I believe now to be a more commodity type business. I don't want to pay growth type PEs for these companies. So if it gets towards single digit PEs, then I might start to look at them again. But there's better growth stories in and around India domestically, then I need to look at IT companies. The only companies I'm looking at with the kind of the exposures, obviously, if I'm correct in that global economy is going to start picking up, then I'd be looking at companies with international exposure in either from autos through to auto parts, and particularly anyone who's got a strong foothold in the US and increasingly Europe as Europe starts to improve in terms of their growth rates in the economy. So those are the kind of focus areas on international companies.
देवेन, ये हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज पर अभी आपका क्या व्यू है, और इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिहाज से ये पूरा सेगमेंट आपको कैसा लग रहा है? स्पेशली जिस तरह के भी अर्निंग्स आए हैं, हमने ज्यादातर कंपनी के नंबर स्ट्रांग देखे हैं, नेट इंटरेस्ट मार्जिन में भी ग्रोथ देखी है, एसेट क्वालिटी भी स्टेबल रही है, कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड्स इन कंपनियों के नीचे आ रहे हैं, और अगर रियल्टी में डिमांड ऊपर जाएगी, डिमांड टेक ऑफ करेगी, तो भी ये सेगमेंट बेनिफिशियल रहेगा. आपका व्यू ओवरऑल ग्रोथ के लिहाज से क्या है हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज का, और अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट करनी हो तो कौन सा स्टॉक चुनना चाहिए?
I think जो हिसाब से आपने बताया, डेफिनेटली द डिमांड आउटलुक इज रिमेनिंग वेरी पॉजिटिव. गवर्नमेंट का जो थ्रस्ट है लो कॉस्ट हाउसिंग के ऊपर, और एट द सेम टाइम जो रियल एस्टेट रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी जो आ रही है, उसके हिसाब से आई थिंक ये पूरे का पूरा सेक्टर को काफी हद तक एक सिस्टमेटिक आउटलुक मिलेगा, ग्रोथ मिलेगा. मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनी करीबन 20% रेट के ऊपर सालाना ग्रोथ कर सकती है, CAGR बेसिस के ऊपर ग्रोथ कर सकती है. तो दैट सिचुएशन इज रिमेनिंग वेरी फेवरेबल ऑन द डिमांड साइड. On the other side, the funding part of the business, deposit rates are coming down for most of the borrowers, and housing finance company के लिए भी deposit कम होते हैं, and साथ में उनको I think even they reduce the rate of interest for the borrowers, they are still getting good amount of spread और नील जो बोलते हैं उनको, उनका इसके अंदर उनको benefit मिलता है. तो ये दोनों तरीके से देखा तो हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज आर रिमेनिंग इन द स्वीट स्पॉट, मेरा ऐसा मानना है. And I think selectively 2 or 3 companies which we look into, I think they are looking all interesting. LIC Finance, Group Finance और HDFC, तीन कंपनीज काफी इंटरेस्टिंग दिख रहे हैं. तो आई थिंक लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट के हिसाब से इन्वेस्टमेंट बना रहना चाहिए.
बिल्कुल. एक बार देख लेते हैं इस बीच मार्केट को भी. निफ्टी 36 पॉइंट ऊपर है 8512 के लेवल पर, और 8500 के ऊपर होल्ड कर रहा है. एंड्रू, we saw how Bharti Airtel has bleeded because of the Reliance Jio impact. This impact, do you see it lasting on stocks like Bharti and Idea? Because today also Bharti and Idea both are actually under pressure because, as far as Reliance Jio is concerned, they are yet to come into full play, but at least the signs are that they will try and extend the free offer period even beyond March.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the regulators will allow them, but again, it's a sector which is going to see continued pressure on both revenues and margins for the existing players, and there's obviously talk of possible mergers within the sector, which is probably keeping prices a little bit higher than they should be. But what we do know is that Reliance are going to want to take huge market share, and they're going to make everyone else pay the same price as they are in terms of lower profitability or kind of falling into losses. So it's a sector I don't need to be thinking about for at least one more quarter. So when I say one more quarter, I'll see what obviously Reliance does at the end of March, but I think by the kind of June-ish, it could be an interesting sector, because I think maybe the pain of what Reliance will be doing will be kind of well played out. But I don't think I need to think about it right now. But it's certainly on the radar. I'm not saying it's like the dark horse of real estate, which I do feel more optimistic. But I think there'll be a valuation point where the likes of the incumbents will look attractive, but it's not yet.